The tribunal wasn't unexpected, but it came much later than he had expected. The human ambassador and the high commander of humanity's armed forces sat together. The ambassador wore his suit with a fine silver tie. He was calm and patient, his well-groomed hair and carefully maintained skin showing no signs of his actual age. His counterpart had chosen to stick with tradition and wore a fully enclosed face mask with a lightweight combat uniform along with a naval admiral hat. Ambassador Jack Lewisley could see that his friend wasn't happy to be there for the non-stop bouncing of their heel. "Calm down. We just need to wait a bit until the vote back home finishes," he said, gently patting his fellow human. "I know, I just don't like being here." The commander's head turned, like he was scanning the room. "They all frankly freak me the hell out. I would rather be a private again." Jack could relate. His life was simpler back then, too. He was just a diplomatic aide. Then that gavel came down and the room went quiet. "This tribunal has been called to find and clear the air about the human military and to bring humanity to pay for its breach of Intergalactic Federation Law 1836 NG 115, intentional misinform on entry to our Federation," the large alien said. His voice carried gravitas and naturality of his station. "Human Ambassador Jack Lewisley and Human Supreme Commander." The alien looked confused for a second. Human Supreme Commander Jack Lewisley, do either of you have anything to say in your people's defense?" Jack stood up, carefully brushing his suit down to make sure it didn't bunch up too much. "Yes, we do." He took a step out from around the table. "Humanity hasn't broken the Federation's bylaws as these questions. I'll be happy to answer all of them as long as my counterpart lets me know that it won't put humanity's safety at risk," he said, his voice and gestures soft and calm. "Very well, then. Let's take the first and most pressing issue." The alien said, "Humanity has been found guilty of breaking Intergalactic Federation Law 1836 NG 115, which states that when a new member joins the Federation, they must disclose the exact or as close to a number of their biological population. However, a recent event has led the Council to believe that you give a figure of around half the true amount. Is this true?" The ambassador turned to his counterpart, who wiggled his hand in the air for a second. "This is not true. We held to the bylaw. The Intergalactic Federation defines biological population as any member of a species that is born by natural reproductive circumstances. The amount we spoke of that day was correct," the ambassador said carefully. "Ambassador, if that is true, and considering your people's reproductive timeline, then how do you explain the human-Darfin War 3 years after you joined?" the alien retorted. "I don't understand," the ambassador said, back maintaining his posture and demeanor. "It was a war. We were attacked and fought back, and won." "Ambassador, according to Darfin, they had killed your population twice over, during 3 years. How did you maintain such a war?" The ambassador looked at his counterpart, who was checking his tablet, then looked up and shook his head. "I am sorry, High Justice. I am not at liberty to disclose that information." The alien looked baffled, then shifted back. "Very well, what about your war with the Valkan? Can you disclose how your people endured a casualty count of nearly 3 times your population before the war started?" The ambassador looked at his counterpart again, who was checking his tablet again, and shook his head again. "I am sorry, High Justice, I cannot." And this cycle of questioning went on for the better part of an hour, going over every war humanity had fought in the last 400 years. Every war, scheme, border incident, and every minor war, too. "What about your war with the Shaltan?" the justice roared, having lost his composure about 20 minutes ago. The ambassador looked to his counterpart again, but this time he held up a single finger before speaking into the room through his face mask's speakers. "Well, Jack, looks like the vote is over. GSS-1 has been repealed, and GFCP-5 has been ratified. Thank God, because I hate wearing this thing," the High Commander said as he stood up, removed his hat, and took his face mask off. The silence that followed was terrifying. The High Commander and the ambassador exactly alike. The only difference was the High Commander's face was covered in scars and had a tattoo on his cheek that read 1037th Air Assault Battalion. The ambassador looked at the High Commander for a second before smiling wide. Jesus, fuck, Jack, what did you do to my face? The High Commander smiled back and chuckled. I made it look honorable, which got both of them to laugh a lot louder. They were finally silenced by the gavel of the Justice. "What is the meaning of this?" they shouted, pointing at the High Commander. "Why are there two ambassadors?" The ambassador looked at the High Commander and gave him a nod before turning to their table to sit down. The High Commander looked up at the Justice and then over to the members of the Federation Senate. "There is only one human ambassador in this room, just like there is only one High Commander present too," he said. His voice, now freed from the mask, sounded identical to the ambassador, but he carried the voice of a man hunted by war and fighting. "You see, I am what humanity calls a gene seed soldier. I am a near-perfect clone of the ambassador created shortly before his birth and genetically modified to have greater endurance, strength, reflexes, and a less empathic and illogical mindset." The room was silent again as the information sank in just as a member of the Senate rose. The High Commander snapped at the movement and continued. "My kind are still humans, but we are here in this reality for a much different reason than the ambassador. We were, are, and will be created to fight humanity's wars. You see, the man who developed the tech believed that the only reason we could advance fast enough was that we are too good at fighting wars. So every gene seed is infertile, has little to no empathy, and is trained from the age of 8 to 18 to fight in every manner of combat. They are then trained in a specialty. I am specialized for large and small tactics." He walked to the front of his table. "We do the fighting so the rest can learn, love, live, and develop. And then when we get too old, we are laid to rest in the only part of this reality we hold sacred on Earth. Well, not really laid, more like dropped from orbit with a knife and a day's worth of combat rations," he said in a cheerful tone. "Yep, that Earth. The one we had then turned into an irritated wasteland. Can't wait for my turn. I hope I get to fight a dread beast." "Jack, I think we should get back on point," the ambassador said from behind him. "Oh, right, yes. Also, you all know how the ambassador is all sweet and kind." "Well, I am not," the High Commander said, standing back up from his leaning position. "In fact, I would go so far as to say I fucking hate every one of you slimy, scaly, furry, hairy, bug-eyed aliens. Not because I'm a supremacist, but because you made my job a living hell. We had to fight uphill battles every time we went to war. After the fifth one, my predecessor decided that he couldn't be bothered to ask for aid. Then it was my turn. I kept trying. My better half came before the Senate made the formal request. By the way," the High Commander looked up at the Justice, "the war with the Shaltan isn't over." The Justice looked confused. "Yeah, it turns out they are from a different galaxy. That's why you idiots were losing so badly. You haven't had an uphill fight in I don't care how long." The High Commander reached into his pocket and pulled out a lighter and a cigarette. Without a word, he lit it up. "Yeah, the best part of it, we stole all their tech, and we are now in the processes of invading their galaxy. As for all that classified information, the reason we can have so many people die is that it is really just my kind being killed, and then having their neural patterns uploaded into a new body a few seconds after death. The tactical and strategic intel is great. Our scouts can just off themselves rather than avoid capture because we still get the intel we need. Also, I am sure you all have reports of highly corrosive material destroying the body and equipment of our soldiers. Yeah, our helmets have built-in neural scanners," he said as if we were reciting a manual. "I myself have died at least 300 times before being transferred to tactical command. Anyways, I'll get to the point. Humanity is done fucking about. As of now, anyone that makes even a snort in the wrong direction will be considered an act of aggression and will be met accordingly. You see, we have surpassed all of you now. We don't need to tail behind you and hope that we get something. Or worst yet, get taxed like crazy by you for expanding our territory on our own." He took a long pull and let out a puff of smoke. "If you want something, you come to him and ask. No, beg for it. If you attack us, we will dismantle your government and let the rest of you pick over the remains. We tried speaking softly, but now the big stick has arrived, and we aren't happy.